So welcome everyone. This is our 101 course, and this is our customer experience mapping overview and a little bit of a deep dive just into the journey mapping portion of our tool. Yesterday we did the 100 level course and we did a high level overview of all of our different features and functions, but we didn't really go deep in any one of them. So today we're going to go pretty deep in customer experience journey mapping. You're still going to have a lot of questions, I'm sure, at the end. But as with anything, the best way to get learning is really just to start using the software yourself and start creating and coming back to us with questions. So hopefully today will give you the confidence that you need to dig in. And if you're already in, then hopefully today will just give you a good refresher and maybe some new tips on how you can use the software. So my name is Julie. I'm the SuiteCX trainer and success coach, and just letting you know that there is a chat box here on the go-to, and if any of you have questions while I'm talking, go ahead and put them in the chat box and I'll take a look at them. And then also I will take logical breaks and stop and then welcome discussion and questions with everyone. So just to do a little reset, a little bit of a refresher, kind of coming off of yesterday. We're going to just talk a little bit about some of the history of journey mapping. So journey mapping has always been kind of a sticky note activity. In the past, it really was literally sticky notes, and this is where you can start to describe the touch points between a customer and a company or the brand and the experience that the customer had. So SuiteCX in its most simple form is basically just a software tool that allows you to do this sticky note exercise. And we take it from being, one-dimensional flat, not data, and we pull it into this three-dimensional environment where you can sort and filter and store and search and query and update and have all your data in one place. So we are uniquely three-dimensional by design. Each of our interaction points, or what we call them I points, acts like a miniature database, which allows for depth of content management at the interaction level. So our users can add as much context as they have available to the interaction points. And once our interaction points are created in the software, you can use them over and over again. So we follow the concept of create once and use many times. We'll talk about that today. So touch points were sort of the vehicle for building journey maps, but touch points lacked the discipline that interaction points provide. So customer journey maps were kind of like the Wild West without rules or law, and the experimentation often was abandoned. You may all have experienced that at your company, where maybe somebody came in, did a really good journey map, it ends up on the wall, doesn't really become actionable. What do you do with it? Years go by, now it's just an artistic artifact. So early journey mapping often lacked a complete life cycle and were more aspirational than fact-based. These maps were static because it was hard to change, and there's very little history of the change to make it valuable, aside from understanding aspirational moments in time, which really ultimately has sort of a low value. So what we're showing here is just sort of some of the history of using sticky notes on the wall to create the most basic form of a journey map. And then today things have really become modernized, and now we've got a lot of creative teams taking a stab at creating journey maps, and they have definitely improved the appearance of the journey maps, but not necessarily the quality of the journey maps. So there are many software packages out there that you could use to create a journey map or a block diagram. But SuiteCX is really the only one that understands this whole idea of taking an interaction point and driving into the three-dimensional. I would also add to this that we are also one of the only softwares out there that pulls in the planning features, which will help enable you get into your priorities, your initiatives, and your roadmaps, where we would like to carry everything forward into that next step, which is ultimately execution. So a little bit, again, just a refresher from yesterday on our account suite structure. So we have the concept of an account. Within accounts, we have suites. Within suites, we have collections of projects. So just some best practices around how you might want to set up your accounts and your suites and your projects. It's good to create project names that indicate business units or departments. This will help you kind of keep track of what you have and where everything is. Each project will have its own survey data, inventory, and maps. If you have new or different survey data, inventory, or maps, then that's a good time to make a new project. It's wise to agree to naming conventions before you get started as a team so that you can easily work together and find your work later. We do recommend creating a naming structure for suites, projects, and maps. For example, you might have a suite called Contact Center. You might have a project called Phase 1 Initial Contact, and within that project, you might have a map called Phase 1 Initial Contact Phone Call Version 1, something like that. So this is going to come down to your versioning and naming conventions for versioning. When a map is in final draft, then rename it as final, and then you can archive earlier maps. Our tool allows for multiple users to edit the same maps at the same time, which is really cool when it comes to collaboration and co-creation. But you want to make sure that you don't have multiple people editing the same map unbeknownst to each other. So it's good advice to assign an owner to a map or assign an owner to a project, and then make sure that whoever else is working on that project has their edits and revisions reviewed by that owner, just so everyone's kind of on the same page. And just a little tip that creating rigor in the beginning will set you up for success as a team. So what is a project? A project is a collection of maps and eye points. We designed the project to be a static collection of data about the customer that will not change. So we like to think of projects as sort of a snapshot in time. So for example, you may create a project from first quarter, and then you might want to compare that project to first quarter of last year, or maybe second quarter. So one of the best benefits to using SuiteCX is the ability to measure your progress. So a little bit around how you sort of navigate the projects and suites. So this is what it looks like when you log into SuiteCX and you're on sort of the project list page. You'll see the name of your project, and within each project, you have the full set of features and functions that we went over yesterday. So within each project, you have your voices, your survey results tools, your voice of customer, voice of employee, voice of institution. You have your customer journey mapping tools. You have your findings and recommendations pages. You have your prioritized initiatives and roadmaps, features, and functions. So each project contains all of this.
Hey Julie, this is Mike. Quick question. I loaded up some dummy data to try to just kind of kick the tires a little bit, and had some questions around when setting up a new project. It gives you the option to look at it in two different ways, and I wasn't sure what the differences were in setting up the project one way versus another.
Okay, cool. That's a good one. We will actually be getting to that next.
Great.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming back. And it looks like Mark has joined. Good. Mark from Epsilon and Tamara. Awesome. Okay, so a little bit around why make a new project. And then our next section after this, we're going to get to Mike's question. So starting a new project gives you a clean slate of data, which can be used independently of other projects or as comparative data. So some of the features and functions available on your project list page, I'm just going to go over each one of them real quickly. So when you log into SuiteCX and you're looking at your sort of set of projects or your project suite, what I'm looking at here is I've got a project, I've got some administrative information about that project, and I'll zoom in a little here. And then I've also got some things that I can do right on this screen relative to this project. So what are these things? Well, starting with edit. So edit allows you to change things like the title of the project. You can also add new team members in the edit feature. Clone allows you to make a copy of the whole project and give it a new name. Delete allows you to delete the project and all associated data. Export allows you to get an Excel download of all the iPoint data in your project, which is pretty cool. I like to think of that feature as if you're working with a client who's going to give you like survey results, plus you're going to be doing journey mapping, plus you're going to be appending data at the interaction point level. And at the end of it, they're like, I want a backup of all this data, or I want you to send the data back to me. I want to know that I'm going to receive back all the work that you've done. Then you tell them that's super simple. We can just click export. We can export the entire project, and it comes out as a nice Excel report, multi-tab, organized. Import. So import kind of fits with Mike's question. Import allows you to create a new project using our CSV import script. And we're going to show you that in a minute. Inventory. This just takes you to the inventory of your project, which is actually the same place that you go if you click on the name of the project. All maps takes you to your map selector. Create takes you to add a map feature to create a new map of any kind. And we also have start a new project, and this will take you to our new project wizard. So there's basically two ways to start a project. You can start a new project by using our wizard, which will just give you a totally blank project with no inventory, no data, nothing. Or you can start a new project by importing a CSV file that you formatted, and that will give you an inventory ready to go with your project creation. So we're going to do that together in a sec. If you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, quick question. Can you merge those two? Like last night, I started a project using your project wizard, and I entered a few iPoints, and then I was like, oh, well, let me add the rest in an Excel sheet, and I couldn't seem to find a way to merge my imported Excel sheet with the project that I had already started.
Yeah, that's a true fact. So basically, to initiate a new project, you can only start blank or start with a CSV. If you started blank and you say, oh, well, I have all these iPoints I would like to import, but I've already started, there's other ways to do it. So, but
Okay.
you can't import and merge directly into that inventory because it's already sort of taken your requirements as default and created that X and Y axes. So we don't really have a good method to overwrite or keep what you have plus overwrite. That's a little weird from a data standpoint. So what we do in that case is we could import our iPoints to a map, and then you can just back add them to inventory. And I'm going to show you that today in an exercise.
Great.
Cool.
That's
Good
helpful.
questions. Great questions. You also have here access to our icon library. So if you click on icon set, this will give you the full list of all icons available in the system along with their icon name. And as we talked about yesterday a little bit, the icon name can be used in your import CSV in the icon field. So very next section here is importing iPoints to begin a project. So when you click on this import in the project selector, it'll take you to this option just down below your project. And this is going to be your import wizard. And this is the import wizard that's designed to import CSV files. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So step one, well, first of all, there's a help center over here on the right. And I highly recommend that you take a look at that. What you'll find there is your CSV import template, which is the file structure that it's expecting the data to be loaded in. You'll have your API in instructions. This is going to tell you everything about the file that you're trying to format, what fields are mandatory, which fields are optional, what it's expecting in each field, if it's an integer or if it's text, how long, and also if it's a lookup, it'll have the lookup table inside the instructions, so you can choose the right words and match with our lookup table. There's also our icon library, so you can search through and find the right icons. So what you do is basically you take your template that you've downloaded and you format it according to the standards in the instruction guide here in this little help center. So what I've done here is I've pulled up a file that I've already got populated. It's representing a retail experience. So picture somebody actually going into a store and buying clothes, but also before, during, and after they're sort of being treated with direct mail, and they're using the website, and they're using a kiosk, and they're just kind of doing things both online and offline. So what I did to format this file is I set up my columns and rows, and these are mandatory fields. This is what's going to give you your X and Y axes, which I haven't even shown you yet, but your inventory, which looks like, whoops, not that one. Your inventory, which essentially looks like this. This is your centralized repository of iPoints and iPoint data. And there's one inventory allowed per project, and it can be absolutely massive or it can be small. For our demonstration purposes today, I've made a very small inventory, but I've loaded files that had over 400 interaction points, and then it scales to size and you just have a bigger inventory. So once you format your file, you choose your file, you upload your file. Once you've done that, it'll give you a little preview of what your file looks like. This is a good place for you to validate that it looks correct. It'll show you your X and Y axes, and it'll tell you how many iPoints it found in the file. Then you give the project a name, and you just keep the items checked as default. This is just going to make sure that you get all the correct features in that project, and then you just click import map, and then off you go, and you get yourself a new project and also a new inventory. So with the Excel file that I showed you just now before we started our class today, I imported and I created a new project. Let me see, I'll back up. I created a new project called New Project for 101 class, and this is the project we'll do our exercises in today. And within that, by using that help center I just showed you where you upload a file, this is a file that was created, and this is an exact translation of this Excel spreadsheet. So those of you who are sort of data centric with the way that you think, this is probably going to be the way that you're going to want to work. That's how I like to work. I also like to teach people how to work this way. Those of you who are more creative, who would rather start with a blank canvas, draw a journey map, and then do inventory later, that's perfectly acceptable. And I can show you also how you can do that. So stay tuned. We'll get to that today in our exercises. Okay, so exporting all iPoint data. Oh, did you have something?
Julie, yeah, just one quick thing to note. When you import and you don't have an icon selected, no icon shows in the inventory list. So then you have to go and click each individual iPoint and select the icon.
That's right.
So that was a question that we, I think, had yesterday, and
yes,
I discovered that last night.
Yes, it's a true story. So in your file, you only have 3 columns here flagged as mandatory. The columns, the rows, and the title of the interaction point. The rest of these fields are optional. So what Mike is saying is this icon field here, or column E, is what gives you the picture inside your iPoint. So that's how you use our icon library to look for the right image that you want to show, and then that's what shows up when you import the file. So it's not mandatory, but when I train people, I always tell them make sure you fill that out because it will make a difference when you upload the file. If you upload the file and either there's something a little bit off about the way you spelled the icon words, or it didn't find a match, or it's empty, it'll load a question mark. And if that does happen, that's okay. The data will still load. Everything will still load. You just need to click into the iPoint and then go to advanced, go to icons, and then here you can find the icon library again, and you can either change the icon that you have or you can select something if you have a question mark. So that's okay too. One thing I will bring to your attention though, because I had data in my Excel file, I had things in here that you can see on the iPoint. So for example, I filled out my emotional end state. My emotional end state is going to be, it's from a lookup table. It's either frustrated or cautious or indifferent or delighted or whatever. Now what that did is that gave me a nice color on the top right-hand corner of my eye point. So yesterday I gave you guys a document that was all about the eye point. And in that document, I believe in that document, there's a page that talks about all the different attributes of eye points, the scores that show on the face of the eye point, the tags that show, things like personas, the fact that I've got a blue dot here in the corner. And I know what that means, obviously, because I use the tool often enough. But what that means is that I loaded a segment or a persona to the eye point, so it selected it for me. And that was all from my file. I loaded an emotional state, so it's automatically selected. I think I loaded a finding and a recommendation. Here it is. I probably loaded some thinking, feeling, doing. I did. Doing, thinking, feeling was in my file, so here it is. So if you think in terms of saving time, if you have data or if there's an image that you can scrape to get the data formatted into Excel, you literally can load this file one time and then the software stores everything that you've loaded and it puts it in the right place. So now you've kind of filled out your database, so to speak. And then now later, when we create maps together, you'll see how these eye points bring this data with them everywhere they go. So if I use this eye point in a map in this project, it's going to keep that persona, it's going to keep this image, it's going to keep the score I gave it, the emotional state, everything about it stays with it. So it's a really nice way to manage your data and not be constantly recreating eye points for every visualization that you do. That's why we do encourage people to use inventory. So that's a little bit about importing. Now you can also export data. So you can export everything from a project. You can also export everything from a map. So on every map that you're on, you have this option over here on the right to download data and statistics for this map. If you click on that, click on Excel, you'll get a full download of all the eye point data in the map and also all the sort of more hidden data, like anything you loaded, scores, metrics, descriptions, emotions, anything like that. So you can think of it in terms of data in and data out.
Julie, can I export? So say I import some things and then I realize, okay, it's more efficient for me to enter a bunch of data in via an Excel than clicking on all of the different icons. Can I export it, make those changes, and then re-import it?
Yeah, you can. Now, the trick is if you're talking about inventory, what you would want to do is basically start a new project with your new improved file.
Okay.
Because once you kind of create a project, you've married that project to that inventory that you started with, whether it was blank or whether it was from an Excel file. So what I do in that case is, let's say, I started with something, but it was partial. And let's say I end up building this out and doubling the size of it, but I'd really rather organize it in Excel than organize it here. What I would do in that case is I would do an extract from here. I would pull out everything I've got loaded and then maybe work offline to add some more. Then I would format that because this extract is not in the exact same file format as the import. So the extract is like multi-tab and it has a whole bunch of more fields in it. The import is sort of a trimmed down single tab version of that. So what I would do then is just copy and paste the right fields into the import script, save this project if I want to as sort of a working project, then create a new project, upload the new more complete inventory, and then start building maps from there.
What if I've already formatted some things or built some other maps? Do I lose all those maps in the new project?
Yes, you do. But they're super
Okay.
easy to recreate depending on how complex you've made the map. So today we're going to build a story map and we're also going to build an executive summary map. So the key for me when it comes to speed of creating maps is all about the eye points. If I have a really good inventory, I can make maps really fast. So I would put more time and effort on the eye point inventory library and the data associated with eye points, and then you can just sort of see how you can move really quickly through creating project or maps. Because aside from doing custom graphic design backgrounds or maybe finding images online that you want to use or entering text, you're going to just be able to import your eye points from inventory and it takes like 2 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So It sounds like then the priority from a step basis is to start with getting the inventory right and solid, and then everything else kind of follows from that. So,
Yeah, exactly.
all right. And if there's any additional data like videos and things that we've uploaded, save all that for a follow-on step. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yep, just save it. And that's what I do. I mean, whenever I go find images that I'm going to use on a map, I save them anyway. So, because the source was wherever, you had a source where you got that original file, you're going to have it saved on a drive somewhere. So when you get into, okay, I've got a better inventory now, I have a new project, I'm going to recreate one of these executive summaries. It's super just simple, just upload, upload, upload. Um, Even when we do custom design backgrounds, you're going to be saving that background as a file. That's an image that you import. So it's super simple to just replace that. That's what I found is the time and effort is best spent on the upfront iPoint inventory and associated data. The map making is much less of a big deal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions. So we can export data. Now, let's talk a little bit about inventory. We've kind of already been talking about it because we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but maybe for those of you who weren't here yesterday. So inventory is a collection of iPoints on a grid map, and we've set up our software so that you can sort of create once and use many times. Inventory allows you to, you can query inventory, you can import into your maps from inventory. You can change iPoints in inventory. You can even change your inventory. So one question that Mike didn't ask, which I'm surprised because he's got a lot of good questions, but if you had some minor changes and it wasn't worth you uploading a whole new file or creating a new project, there are things you can do right on your inventory. For example, I just increased the size of my first purchase phase. I increased the size of my sales phase. Maybe I want to go grab a new iPoint that has some relevance to me. Like, okay, this is going to be in my retail store. Close it. I'm going to give it a name, retail outlet, because this is my retail story. You know, and I can even give it an emotion. I can give it a direction. This is going to be interactive. Emotional state with this is interested. That's why people come in, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I've just basically modified my inventory. So if you're on the phone thinking, oh, I don't like working in Excel, or I don't know if I want to do an import, don't worry, you don't have to. You could build your entire inventory just by doing what I just did. You can click on the life cycle phases to make them bigger or smaller. You can right click on them to change the name of the life cycle phase. Same with the departments and channels. You just right click, change, add, remove, delete. Like this now, okay, I made it big, but I don't need it to be big. Now I'm just going to make it small again. You can work in a structure like this. So once let's say you've loaded up a partial file, or maybe you started a blank project with no inventory, you can just literally modify everything that's in inventory, make it reflect what you think is appropriate, add your iPoints manually by clicking into the iPoint library and put them on the page. And then you just have to do the little bit of extra work of adding the data. You know, if you have findings or recommendations, you can just click in here and enter that data manually. So that's really the only difference is you're either entering the data in Excel and uploading it, or you're doing it here. Both are perfectly acceptable ways to work.
Now, Julie, so two things. One, the default structure that you have down the left-hand side where you show sales, marketing, there's a decision point when you set up a new project, and one is CX by channel and one is CX by department. Can you explain the differences between those two? I think it's further up or higher up on when you set up a.
Yes, you got it. So what he's talking about, and I'll show you. So I'm going to back up. You notice I'm using my breadcrumbs in the black upper navigation to sort of back out of my project. If you guys didn't notice it earlier, I'll do it again. But this is how you get back to your project list page. So this is a full list of all the projects that I have in my suite. Let's pretend this is the only suite I have. Don't look at my admin list here. Let's pretend all I have is a trial offer. I have one project, and now I have two projects. What he's talking about is that there's two ways to create a new project. So we've been really focusing on, I would like to create a new project by importing a formatted CSV file that has my iPoints in it, along with all associated data. While the other option is you can say, I would just like to create a blank project. I'm not going to import anything, and I'm just going to give it a name. So I'm giving it a name. Now here's a choice that you can make. We've got a couple options here where you can say, okay, are you choosing customer experience by department or by channel? This is nothing to get hung up on. All we've done here is we've given you some default values. You can change them later. And depending on what you click, let's say if I click CX by department, I'll get things like across the top, I'll get like awareness, consideration, purchase, etc. That's my life cycle phase. We call that CX. And then across the rows or the y-axes, I'll get things like when we think about department, what we're thinking about are things like sales department, marketing department, engineering department, technical support department, whatever it may be. It's kind of like a business way, a business orientation way of looking at things. CX by channel is more appropriate for if you're looking at your customer interaction points by sort of really officially the touch points, whether that be website, social media, um, email, direct mail, traditional, out of home, advertising, whatever. So if you choose CX by channel, oh, good, here's a hover over. That's cool. So this is what this would look like. Across the top, awareness, consideration, first purchase, use, repurchase, a trite win back, and then down on the left, search, social, email, web, landing page, contact center, retail. If you choose CX by department, it's the same life cycle phases. It just says now instead of talking about channels, it talks about departments. So customer service, store, retail, finance, IT, etc. And then we have these other ones that are a little bit more sort of advanced. So this one is talking about, okay, maybe I'm working in a B2B environment and I would like to talk about my demand by channel. So demand would be something like demand trigger, prospect, qualifying the lead, a respondent, are you sales qualified, closing using a trite and win back. It's just a different language. It's less customer language and more business language. And then over here on the left is going to be those channels again. And then this one here, same concept where you're kind of thinking in terms of I'm a B2B and this is how I close a sale across the life cycle. And then over across the left would be sort of the departments that we think some B2B companies would likely be working with, which would be like your sales team, your field sales, your marketing team, customer service, etc. So choose whichever you think makes the most sense for where you want to start. I'll choose CX by channel, and then you just leave everything else here default selected. That just means I want everything available, all the features, click save. And then now what I've done, I've just created a new project with a blank inventory, and my inventory axes titles are those that you saw in the preview. And again, I can just change those by right-clicking on them and giving them a new title, and then I can make it my own. So this is a perfectly fine way to start a new project. Add your iPoints through the iPoint library and start appending your data. Input your iPoints where you want them to be. So does that help, Mike?
Yeah, that does. And then, on your existing example, say I have a whole bunch of iPoints in a life cycle phase in a column or in a row, and I want to change where that shows up on the screen. Can I just, like I can in Excel, just copy the whole column and move it over, or and then how do I add a new categorical column into that list?
Okay, good. Thank you for helping me today. This is great. I love these questions. So how do I change the structure of what I've got here? Maybe I want my awareness, column to be way over here. Maybe I just want to move this around a little. Maybe I want to add a couple more that aren't part of the default package. what you do here is go to your map selector. Now, if you remember yesterday, we talked a little bit about things you can do on the map selector view and how there's this little edit button next to each one of your maps. So your inventory map will always be at the top. And if you click edit, it'll bring you to a configuration screen. So this is another place where you can totally change everything that's in your inventory as far as structure. And let's say,
Aha.
yeah, this is
This
it.
is the missing link,
Yeah.
yes.
So let's say I want to add a new column, or let's say I just kind of want to move things around a little bit. Like I'll put this here. Let's say that's more appropriate for me. And then I'm going to add another row and say this is like, I don't know, maybe we did like a huge YouTube thing. So that deserves its own row. Click save. There we go. Now I've just added to or modified my inventory structure.
And how does that impact what's already been put into those columns? Does it move everything over, or is it just change the label and then you have to move everything over?
Let me do it in one that already has data. So let's go. So this one was easy because we didn't have any eye points in here. Let's back out and basically make a couple changes to one where I've got eye points. So if I click into this one that I created from my import script, and let's do, like, what would be a good use case here? Do you want to, maybe we'll switch consideration of first purchase, and I'm thinking that would be a good one. So we'll switch consideration of first purchase. Now I'm quite sure that's not going to move my eye points for me, Mike. I think I have to do that myself. So what I would
Okay.
honestly, so what I would probably do before doing that is I would probably switch them myself. And then you know what I would do in that case? If it's something simple like that, I would not even bother using the configurator. I would just do it right
Right.
here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I imported it, imported everything in one row. Like I had a whole bunch of emails that I loaded
Oh.
up, and so there were 25 different emails, and I put them in one row across the life cycle. And then I realized as I was going through it that, you know what, I actually needed to add a new column and characterize a different section of the life cycle and break it up into some different chunks. And I was wondering if there's some sort of systemic way of doing that other than manually just kind of moving things around. Now, can you highlight more than one icon and move multiple icons? Like, can you
Nope.
draw a box around them? No.
One at a
Okay.
time. Yeah. And you can kind of see where it's grabbing. It'll kind of highlight it behind
Right.
it. So yeah, that's it. One at a time.
Okay. Does it really matter as long as there's an inventory? Does it really matter where they are in this grid, or?
Only for you, and it will matter later when you query your inventory.
Mhm.
So let's like, I don't mind jumping ahead because actually, let me see where I'm at in my
No, I
little.
mean that's fine. These are just some practical things, and I'm sure you're going to cover them. I just want to make sure. So one other quick question, like you have in there, talk to an in-store greeter, right?
Mhm.
Or you get an email greeter. What if that happens on a second purchase? So say I really want to focus on that first purchase, but then I want to drive repurchase, and the person revisits the store and talks to the in-store greeter again. Do I need to have that iPoint listed twice, or once it's in inventory, do I use it twice in the
Um,
map?
I would list it twice just so that you're being clear.
Okay.
Like, yeah, so like if we were to add another, let's say we did, this is how I would do it. Let's add a repurchase. And then what I would do, because this map is not just a storage for you, it's also really telling a story. So you can use this map as a client deliverable. If you build this out.
Right. Okay.
So I would say I would click on this, I would clone it.
Oh, that was my next question. How do you copy it? Okay, to
Yep,
clone.
I would clone it.
All right.
And then now the thing about cloning is if you, for some reason, want to change a metric about this eye point that you cloned, like if it doesn't have the same attributes as the original eye point, you see how they both have a score of 7.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me do a test here. I think this should work since you cloned it. Now, let's say this one has a score of 9 because it just performs better for whatever reason. Okay, good, that works, no problem. So you can do that. Do a clone. You can change data in a second iPoint. It's going to treat it like a unique iPoint anyway, even though it's a copy. So that's what I would do.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then when you import into your story maps, you'll know if you're pulling your talks to in-store greeter, you'll know if you're pulling it from consideration or from repurchase. That way you can identify, having it live in its own column helps you know which iPoint am I talking about when I pull it into my map. Because you might do a journey map that's all about repurchase. And if you're doing a journey map that's all about repurchase, you're only going to want to pull in the iPoints relevant to that phase.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Cool. You're welcome. Okay, so just a refresher, super quick, give you guys a regrounding in the navigation once you're in a project, and I'll just scoot over here and do it here. So once you're in a project, you've got your voices modules over here on the left. I'm in a sort of pared down project right now, so I don't have my VOE and VOI, but this is where you would have your survey results. You've got your findings, your recommendations, prioritize, which we talked about yesterday, which is, okay, I want to pull through the recommendations that I've got in my project and I want to prioritize them. I'm going to prioritize them here, and then I'm going to see them on my initiatives 2x2 diagram. I only had one thing in there because this project is not set up to demo these features. Then I'm going to click into my roadmap. So that's all that is, just a regrounding in the navigation. You've got a help center in the upper right-hand corner next to your name. This will take you to our help system, which will give you all the lesson files that I teach on the webinars, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. And then you've got a little link here to email us if you have a problem or if there's a bug in the system, send us a picture and we'll fix it. And then other than that, whatever screen you're on, you're going to have different features available in the upper right and also in the footer. So just pay attention to the footer. There's functionality in the footer, and there's also functionality up here in the upper right-hand corner. So we talked yesterday about the concept of tabbed workflow. We talked about how our navigation is set up to emulate consulting best practices. So just from a very high level, we like to start with customer surveys, employee surveys, and institution surveys. From there, we like to build journey maps. We also pull through our findings and recommendations, which could have come from our surveys or from our interaction points. Then we work through our prioritization of recommendations as tasks. Then we pull them through as initiatives, and then we build roadmaps. And if you guys want to listen to yesterday's recording, we talked more about it yesterday, and we're going to talk about it like crazy tomorrow. This is just sort of an idea of some of the features and functions that are available on your mapping screens. I'm not going to get into it, but later just kind of hover over and click on all of these options up here at the top. There's a lot of things that you can do here, and at the end of the class today, I'll tell you about a few of the most important things. And the map selector, just a reminder, that's your home page. That's where you want to go to get back to where are all my maps, how do I edit them, how can I clone a map, and how do I delete and archive a map. So just sort of regrounding us again in journey maps. What is a map? So in SuiteCX, a map is a way of showing or describing a journey experience, system, or process. It can be any of the above. We have many different kinds of maps used for describing journeys, experiences, systems, or processes in a ton of different ways, and you can mix your journeys, experiences, systems, and processes in any combination. So obviously you can tell there's a lot of just sort of creativity here, storytelling creativity. There really is no industry-defined standard as to what a journey map is or what goes on a journey map, so you're still working in a really nice open white space. And with that comes the caveat that just because you made a map doesn't mean that your audience can understand it, and it also doesn't mean that you're able to convey the right information or get them to take the right action. So this is where we really want to focus on storytelling and context and why it's so important to make our journey maps understandable simple and easy for someone to take away the most important highlights and the most important points. And we as a software, we simply enable you to do that, but you as practitioners are going to have to really refine your storytelling and journey mapping capabilities. And this is going to be your opportunity to do that. So we have something like 27 different map types available to choose from. And if you want to know what our map types are, the best way to find them is to go to your map selector, click Add a Map, and basically just take a look. We've got a tabbed structure here, and these are all the different maps that we have in the tool to choose from. If you don't know what the map looks like, you can hover over the empty bullet just to the left of the name of the map, and it'll give you a preview. So you can see if you see something that makes sense or that would be the right format for you to tell your story. I'm training people on the freeform story map, process maps, and ultimately we created this map called the 3 to 10 column hybrid map, and this map essentially allows you to do everything that the other maps allow you to do. So I do tend to focus a lot on this map. This map has a ton of flexibility. We're going to build one of these together today, and this is where I'd like everyone to kind of focus, just because it's sort of become the best map we have. We have some other maps that are a little bit unique that we're going to keep, like our brainstorm maps. Those look totally different. Our persona and segment maps, I'll show you one of those today. And our freeform story map is also very special because it's our only map where you can upload a custom background, which could be a graphic design of any kind. And these maps are totally awesome. So if you look at this and say, oh, there's too many templates, I feel like I'm overwhelmed, try to focus on just starting with freeform story map, and then try your hand at the 3 to 10 column hybrid map. Those are the two main maps. If you need to build a brainstorm, use any one of our brainstorm maps. Those are super easy to use. You're just going to be using sticky notes basically. And persona maps. So you really are looking at only a short list of maybe 5 different map types that you need to learn. I will tell you that in the future, we will be turning off some of these other map types because we really feel that we've solved this with our templates that we have, just the 5 I just mentioned. So don't feel overwhelmed. Use any of these that you like, but if you want to keep it simple, just focus on freeform story, hybrid, brainstorm, persona segment, and maybe something else that you like that I didn't mention. So configurable maps, we have a bunch of maps that are highly configurable, meaning they are driven by data or by some configuration that you've done. I will show you one of those today. Yesterday we went into great detail on what is an iPoint, and I sent you guys a 5-page document that I hope you all read at some point regarding what is an iPoint, where does data come from, how do I think of the right data I might need for my iPoint, and what's the difference between customer related scores and metrics and data and thoughts and feelings and business related metrics and activities. So I won't go on about that again today. The anatomy of an eye point, I do think this is interesting. I believe that's in that 5-page document I gave you yesterday. If you didn't get that document, just say something in the chat box and I will make sure I email it to you today as a follow-up. This is going to give you an idea of what's visible on the face of the eye point, like which scores show, why does only one score show, and we have all these metrics. What are actors? How many of them show on the face of my eye point? What about the emotions? What colors are they, etc. So you can read up on that on your own. We have a whole set of what we call sortable, searchable features. And I'm going to show you today how to use your inventory as a place to query and import.
Julie, quick question on the anatomy of an eye point. When you go through and start to catalog or enter information, it talks about outbound or inbound. What point of view do you use for this when characterizing something as outbound or inbound?
I know, it changes, right? It changes based on your perspective. It's like, it just kind of, it's one of those context things. So inbound or outbound is, are we as a company contacting the customer, that would be, in my opinion, that would be outbound. It's outbound from us to them. Or am I the customer receiving something or going to the company? I'm calling the call center. That would be like an inbound. Generally, we do it from the company's perspective, just because generally you're sort of mapping to help solve a company problem, not.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, that's usually the perspective that we take. And interactive is anything where maybe if physically they're together at a retail store and talking and working through things face to face.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome. So iPoint styles, depending on what type of map you use, the iPoints will look different. And that's okay. They're still iPoints. They still have all the same data that you've given them, and they still have all the same attributes, and they still have the same data available to load against them. They just look different. It's a style thing. So we have like 5 different types of iPoints. If you're working on a map and the iPoint looks different, don't worry. It's just been designed that way. You still have everything you need behind it. The iPoint callout editor, what we are referring to when we say that is when I click on an iPoint, I open up this dialog box. This is what gives me access to all these different attributes. We call this our callout editor. So I think another one of the homework assignments I suggested yesterday was just to open up an iPoint and click through the entire callout editor and just look at all the different things that you could add to your iPoint to give your iPoint context. I don't think we need to do that together. That's something you guys can do as a follow-up. To me, it helps stimulate thoughts and how we can start to pull in more data, just seeing what some of the placeholders are. So no big deal, skip through that. Okay, cool. So let's create a simple story map, and I will show you a couple different ways to get iPoints into your story map, and maybe even a little bit about how you can back your iPoints into inventory if they're not already in inventory. So this is where we left off with our inventory. We've got these iPoints in here. I think there's 14 because we had 13 and we added one. Now I'm going to go to my map selector and I'm going to just create a simple freeform story map. So I'm going to do a freeform story map. I'm going to choose freeform story and click save. Now it's going to organize it for me in my map selector. So it put it under story map because that's the type of map it is. I'm clicking on it. So now I've just got a blank canvas. So let me show you all the different ways you can get iPoints onto your canvas. The first way, the preferred way that I like to work, but that doesn't make it the right way, it's just my preference, and I'll teach you other ways too, is I like to use what's in inventory. So let's say I want this map to be just a map about the awareness phase of my experience. So I'm going to use my inventory filter. It always comes up as blank just by default. Click show all. What I like to do is click show me by default lifecycle. So now this is the kind of the advantage of why you use inventory and also why you create new columns. So, Mike had asked the question earlier, you might have an iPoint that shows up in more than one phase of your project. You really need to sort of give your inventory a new phase name. And the reason why you do is because of this. So if I'm making a smaller map and I want to focus on awareness, I can add the iPoints from awareness to my map. But let's say my future plans include, I'm going to create a map for every one of these phases. And now I have a new phase called repurchase because I put it in the inventory, which means now I can group any iPoints that I put into that phase and they're going to show up as their own sortable and searchable group. Click back to map. Now I basically can just pull my iPoints and just lay them out across my map, which is pretty cool. This is what I meant by saving time. Now I've kind of got a map started. I didn't have to search through the icon library. I didn't have to go look for iPoints. I already had them in my inventory, so now creating a map becomes pretty quick. Another way to add iPoints to your map. Let's say I did not work in inventory. I don't have an inventory. So use case number 1 was import from inventory. So let's collect these guys over here and we'll give them a title. And I'll say use case 1, was import from inventory. So these eye points all came from inventory, and they're going to sit over here. Okay.
Julie, could you show again how to import just a portion of the items from inventory?
Yeah. So what you do is on your map, and this feature works on every type of map that we have, all 27 map templates. You go up to the upper right, and there's what's called an inventory filter. You click on the inventory filter. It defaults to blank, but all you have to do is click show all. It'll group them all together as one lump, or you can say show me by icon type, which is kind of a weird one. I never use this. Show me by default rows, which is, okay, show me by my department or channel, sales, marketing, website. I always use show me by lifecycle, just because when we're doing our storytelling, we're always telling our stories based on life cycle. We're always saying this is what happens in the awareness phase, or this is what happens in consideration. That's how we dive into our insights. So if you sort by default life cycle, notice it won't show me awareness anymore because my awareness eye points are already on my map. So this is it's pre-filtering. It knows that I already have a map with awareness eye points on them, so it's just going to show me other eye points. So you just click on each one that you want and say add this.
Can you select an entire section?
Yeah. Well, you just add this, add this, add this. You can do it by clicking on each eye point within each section. It basically gives you like a filter feature. You could do a bulk and do insert all, which is fine if you're going to tell a story that covers all the phases. Sometimes that's too many eye points. So you can do one big bulk, or you can do one at a time organized by phase. We don't really have a button to say, give me all the first purchase or give me all the consideration.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to kill this guy just because we already did this one. Okay, so use case number 2 is I don't have anything in my inventory, so there's nothing for me to search on. So instead, you can, if you look in the footer, there's another opportunity to upload eye points. So we have a CSV file format to upload eye points directly to a map. This is going to take out the X and Y axes requirement, so you don't need to have a lifecycle or department. You just need to format the file per the specs in the footer here. So I'll show you what that file looks like. It's basically a lot of the same information. We've just taken out the, let me see, the column and row. So now you're just looking at, okay, I'm just going to tell you the name of my eye point. I'm going to give it a description. I no longer need a column and a row. And then pretty much everything else is the same. So everything's in a slightly different order, but basically the same. So I've pre-formatted this file for us to use to look at in this class. So now I'm just going to say upload eye points, omit first row. Now it's going to ask you at this point, do you want to automatically add these eye points to your inventory map? So this is another way that you could build your inventory without having built your inventory already. You can say yes or no. It'll say, how do you want to position it on the map? I don't really care about that. That's not a big deal. So I'll choose my file, click open.
What's the implication to auto adding them to the inventory map or not? Like, why would you do one over the other?
You would do one over the other. This is how I like to look at it, as the way I treat my inventory is like the collection of eye points that I think are most common across the entire project. So let's say, so if I create my inventory once, I'm going to use those eye points throughout the entire project to help tell my story. But let's say I have a whole set of eye points that have nothing to do with the eye points that are in my inventory. Let's say they're different because maybe they're totally backstage interaction points. And by backstage, I mean maybe they're all about our business process. Maybe I have an entire map or set of maps that I'm going to design that have nothing to do with the customer, and it has everything to do with how we handle our call center database system, or how we train new employees to support the customer. Let's say it's something just totally different. In that case, I might not want to mix those together. It might not make sense. They might not live on the same columns and rows. So in that case, I would probably keep them separate. So let's say these came from inventory, but these over here, I just imported directly onto the map, and I might just leave them as part of this map, and I might never put them in inventory. So the implication is either it's a collection that makes sense to you because they belong together, or it's an opportunity for you to have additional eye points separate from your inventory so that you can use them in your stories.
Okay. Can I change the freeform map arrow colors? Like if I wanted to highlight one phase in red and then another phase in blue, could I do that?
You know, we don't really have a way to change the background colors. What you can do is you can change the shape. So I
Mm-hmm.
can right click on the background and give myself a new map style. And this one actually works a little bit better for what I'm doing right now. But it's always going to be this kind of default blue. The way that we work around that in most cases is we just do our own custom backgrounds. So let's
Okay.
say if you kind of liked the way this background looks, but you want something a little bit more customized where, you know, this one is green and then this one is red and you've got even some other lines and maybe it's something just really unique. What we would do in that case is have you design that background, or we also do graphic design here. And you probably have a department at your company that does graphic design. Tell them what you want. We'll give you the specs as far as it needs to be like format JPEG or PNG, and it needs to have a height and a width of XYZ. Put it that format as an image, and then you just right click, click upload your own background, and it will pull that background into this map, and then you draw your eye points on top of it.
Okay, thank you. Does the tool kind of say which background is appropriate for which specific, use cases or scenarios? Like, is there some sort of additional support where it says, okay, this background is, for, multiple redemption or recurring processes, or like just to
No,
help guide some
yeah,
of the
no,
practitioner development?
that's kind of a good idea. That would be like a best practices kind of thing, but we don't really have any standards like that. And I think a lot of that is just because it's so subjective.
Hmm.
Um, like what this means to me or to my story might mean something different to you and to your story.
Okay.
So for that reason, we kind of just have a set of backgrounds that you can just do whatever you want with. And then this custom background thing is pretty popular. We do a lot of custom backgrounds. We're probably doing like one a week. So a lot of times if you have something special or unique, or you have a story that isn't going to be easily told through one of our backgrounds, then that custom background thing is probably the way to go. I'm going to show you a really quick custom background, and then I'll get off it really quick because it's actually a real background for a real project. But this is a background that we created out as a graphic design. And right now you see there's eye points on it because we extracted it from the tool. But these are eye points, you can't even tell probably by looking at this which part we did in graphic design and which part we did in the tool. But I can tell you the lines, the way that the lines are shaped, the colors of the lines, the text boxes, the arrows, this was all done in graphic design. And then we just upload it as a background, and then we add eye points to it. And, it changes the way this looks dramatically, because if you notice, this map is kind of small. This map is absolutely huge, and it's all done in the same map background. It's all in the same environment. So if you load a huge background, the tool will scale to give you a bigger canvas, if that makes sense.
Okay, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we showed you how to import from inventory. We showed you how to import directly to the map. And then we'll do one more use case on this. And that would be for anyone who is like, I hate Excel, quit talking about Excel. So if you hate Excel, let's quit talking about Excel. Just click on the iPoint library. You can literally build your entire story by just looking for what you want and clicking on it. You know, so click on a set of iPoints, give them a name, give them a place on the story where you think they belong, and then they become part of your journey map. So we do have a way to accommodate pretty much every working style. And use case 3 is use my icon library. There's no right or wrong way. I think that over time you learn more proficient ways to work. So the more you use the tool, the more you're going to learn how to just be faster. And what being faster means to you might be a little bit different than what being faster means to me. So Christy just asked a question. Let me see, Christy. Let me make sure you are all unmuted. Okay,
Oh,
Chris,
there we go.
there you go.
Okay.
Hey, chime in there. I'm glad you chatted me. I didn't know that you were stuck over there.
That's okay. I was wondering with this map here, with this pathing, there's two circular areas, which I really like that for one of the maps that I'm creating right now, because there is one point where people might get stuck in a cycle, but it only happens once throughout the process. So is there some way to have like that kind of side? I see that there's a circular process. There's one circle on the upper right, but that means it's necessarily part of the process. And the nice thing about the other map is that, the one that we had, oh, there we go, yeah. The nice thing about that is that it looks like you still follow the path, but you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, it's like it looks like this is sort of the main path, but these are exceptions.
Yeah, exactly. So I was wondering, is there any way to remove one of the cycles from this path?
What I would do is I would remove one of these cycles in a photo editing tool. And you actually really don't need a super advanced photo editing tool. I use Snagit, and I edit all kinds of things in Snagit. So what I would do is I would just take this background, save it as an image,
Mm-hmm.
without the eye points on it, just a nice clean image of the lines and everything. And then you can
Mm-hmm.
just sort of build a shape around one of these circles and just color it white and just make it go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then save it as a new image and then say upload. And then there you go.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, but I need to make sure that I have the appropriate width. So I have all the colors.
Yeah. And I can send you the height and width that we expect for custom backgrounds. I'll just shoot that over to you after the call. And then
Okay.
you can make sure that, when you're using your photo editing tool, something like Snagit, if you click here, you can set your width and your height, your
Mm-hmm.
pixelation, and just click apply, and then it'll give your image exactly the right size.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Yeah, that's.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we are never going to stop using the freeform story map, just because we have this capability to upload your own background and we use it all the time. So it's really kind of a neat feature. I mean, some of our more executive summary style maps get really fancy. Like I'll show you guys like a typical um, executive summary style or look of a map. If I have any nearby or anywhere close to nearby. Maybe I'll just click on one in the tool. But they're definitely giving you tons of information, but they don't have the custom background feature. So if I look at like one of our hybrid maps, which I really like to use, I can add things like, oh no, not this one, that's just a process. I can add things like images and videos and all kinds of cool context. I can even add small journey maps or an emotional heat map and data and graphs and all that. But this map doesn't have the custom background. So that's why we recommend use this map and also the freeform story. It'll kind of just do everything for you between the two of them. And so, yeah.
So, Julie, back to that original map. If I choose to build my map in that freeform tool and just add icons to it, is there a way to get those icons into inventory?
Okay, so you want to go back to
So
the
say
freeform
I'm
story
more
map.
visually inclined, and not that I am, but if I were, and I built all like those 3 icons, use case 3, where I use the icon library to populate, and I want to add those 3 icons to inventory.
Yes. That was my next lesson too, so this is good. This came from library. I am from library. I'm just giving them different names. Okay, so question was, let's say I'm working in this creative space. I'm just using the icon library to add my iPoints to the map, but I actually want to back build an inventory. I ultimately, at the end of the day, I do want to have an inventory, so I would like a way to do that. All you do is, and we can't do this in bulk, unfortunately, but click on the iPoints you added, and then there's this little button here that says Add to Inventory. Just click that, and I'm going to do that 3 times. Add to inventory, add to inventory. Now I'm going to go to my inventory. Now these are the new iPoints that I added from my story map to inventory. And now I've given it a home, and now that it's locked into a home here in inventory, it will now show up in all future queries and filters and searches.
I think I have identified my first bugs me a request.
Oh, good.
And that's to do group selection in a freeform story map of icons, so you can do
add to
global
inventory.
treatment changes.
Right, add to inventory.
Yeah.
I'm also going to show you something today that is really helpful when it comes to managing data and managing iPoints. This is usually something we save for a more advanced class, but we're going there today anyway, so I'm fine with it. So if you click on this download data and statistics, if all the way over to the far right, there's an option here to go to iPoint database tool. This is going to give you basically a place to select any map that's in your project, and it'll show you all the iPoints in that map. It'll tell you whether that iPoint is or is not in inventory. It'll give you the ID of that iPoint so that you know that it's unique. This is a unique iPoint. It'll let you edit, delete, clone the iPoint, and just see some top line information about the iPoint. So why this comes in handy is if you're dealing with something like, okay, I've got my freeform story map, and I want to know of the iPoints that I have on this map, how many of them are in inventory and how many are not, just at a glance. I can just do a sort. I can say, okay, these are already in inventory. So those either came from my original Excel import or they were the 3 that I clicked on after the fact. And so these look like these are all my awareness iPoints that we imported from inventory. These are the iPoints we uploaded through our Excel file that we chose not to add to inventory, but remember we had that option. So when I did my Excel import, and I'll show you that again real quick just to refresh. When I did my Excel import, it asked me, it said, do you want to add these to inventory? So that's another place, Mike, where I could have just done that right there. So that's quick too. That's kind of like bulk. So it doesn't help the creative person who just wants to drop the iPoints on the map and doesn't want to work with Excel. I guess we created a really easy way to work in Excel as far as getting inventory populated, but it's a little bit more manual if you're not working in Excel. But that database tool is pretty useful. You might want to try exploring that and just look at the different information you can gather from being here.
And how did you get there?
I got here, go back to my map. Let's go back to freeform story map. I got here by clicking on the button to the right. Let me zoom out, which is download data and statistics for this map. If you click on that, it'll give you the Excel download and some other statistics views. To the far right, it says go to iPoint database. So this is your iPoint database.
Okay.
So I use this a lot just to kind of validate data. You can clone iPoints, you can get a status of what you're doing, what's in inventory, what's not. And you can do things here with your iPoints. You can even create a new iPoint. So lots to do here. Some people just like to work in this type of environment, and then they flip over to the maps just for sort of the style and design. But when it comes to sort of getting data in, we've got kind of a lot of different ways to do that. Okay, so I've run out of time, but just a couple key points that I want to make. And Christy, you and I have talked about this a lot. If you don't see a save button on the screen that you're on, then that means that the tool is automatically saving for you. We do have this is a browser-based software, so we do have sometimes issues with interruptions in your, you could have an interruption with your internet connection, or like some of our clients work on highly secure VPN connections where IT has set up automatic refreshes on a continuous basis just to make sure there's no, threats going on. Because of that, it's possible that you can do work for a period of time and not realize that you may have timed out. So just a best practice is I hit refresh usually. If I'm working for a really long time and I haven't clicked on anything in a while, I've just been moving things around, I'll just hit refresh just to make sure that everything is saving. Now, Christy, you notice when I'm working, I did a whole bunch of stuff here and I didn't have any of those timeout issues that you had. So in some cases, maybe get off the VPN, your work VPN. If you're having problems with your connection, and work separately, you'll find that the use case is a lot better. And in cases where you do have a save button, use it. Like I said, some places have it, some places don't. So if you're working on something, you see one, just click on that. And okay, we covered all this. Do you guys know how to print?
Could you talk about the CDP buttons on the bottom?
Oh yeah, okay, I was gonna skip that. CDP is, I'll show you.
Sorry, I do want to know how to print, but
Okay. The best way to show you CDP is in inventory, and this is going away. So it's kind of a legacy feature. We've solved.
All right, then don't worry about it. I mean,
no, it's okay. I'll show you because it's live today. So I'll show you. So you remember how I clicked on the iPoint and I had this iPoint dialog come up, and I had all this, information available for me to add context.
mm-hmm.
If you click on C, you will have different data available to click on. So did you notice how now this looks totally different?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're not mutually exclusive. They all work together. You could theoretically fill out C, D, and P, and your extract would show you everything. But right now they're separate. The reason why they're separate, if I click on P, I've got some different things here. I've got a whole nother tab all about campaigns. So marketing campaigns. What's the name of the title of your campaign? What's the launch date, market date, how many touches, who created it, who approved it, campaign type, channel, promotion, etc. Totally different stuff. So this is because way back, like a million years ago, we had 3 different tools and we used them for 3 different purposes. Now we've combined everything into one tool. So we're having a launch coming up pretty soon where we're going to have one iPoint editor. It's going to contain everything in one place, all the campaign information, so this is kind of what we call it. The precision, the P stands for precision, and that contains things like campaign information as we work towards like improving our marketing communications. D stands for diagnostic, and that's where we work. That's where the majority of things are. Everything is here except campaign for the most part. And this is where you do your findings, recommendations, your scores, your metrics, all the things that I've kind of been showing you and teaching you. Then C stands for collaborate, and that's a super, super pared down, very simple version of an interaction point where all you're going to do is add really simple things like you're going to give it a sticky note color, you can give it a pain point or a moment that matters or whatever, give it an emotion and a segment, and then nothing else is available. So, if you're working with a group of people and you just really don't have a lot of data, you don't ever plan to have a lot of data, you could work in this collaborate mode just for the sake of simplicity. However, when we consult and teach, we realize that everything is better if you have more data. So we're really kind of trying to teach people to add more data, to use more data, to think about where you could get scores and things like that, just because it makes a huge difference in the quality of your storytelling. So those are the options, and that's what happens when you click on C, D, or P. It changes your iPoint editor.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to create a hybrid today, but I think that's okay because we covered a lot of really good stuff, and we talked a lot about iPoints and how to get them into your project. So whatever else you guys have, let's just do questions and answers at this point, if there is anything else. Tamara, do you have anything? Oh, looks like she just went offline. And Christy, how do you think have I helped you today with anything that was new or different or that is complementary to things that you've already learned?
Yeah, definitely. I still have a couple of questions, but I think it's going to be easier for me to show you. And the unfortunate thing is that this is our company's data. I can't show it to the group.
Oh, yes.
So,
Okay. Well, that's okay. Why don't you send me your availabilities? Send me an email with some options for the next couple days, and we'll just get together and go through them.
Okay. I was wondering if you had time after today's meeting, but maybe that's too soon.
No, I do. If you can give me a break, can I get like a 30-minute break?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Julie, before we drop, can you talk about the 360 view that I've seen on some of the, I think it's in the iPoint editor?
Yes. So in the iPoint editor, you've got your basic tab, your advanced tab. You've also got something super awesome that I didn't have time to show you because our software has too many features. But the administrative information tab is awesome, and I'll show you why in a second. But Mike asked about the 360. Click on the 360. Now this is a place where you can see at a super high level some really basic information about this interaction point. We do have workshops, clients, people who actually print every single one of their interaction points as handouts. So let's say you had a group of people in the room and you said, okay, guys, I think these are our most important interaction points. This is the information I've been able to gather about the interaction point. I've got scores, I've got metrics, I've got some descriptions, I've got some attachments, whatever I have. Can we talk about this? Can we validate this? Let's do something around this. This would be something you could just print out and bring with you to that meeting. And people do that. People like build binders and print these out and put them in the binder. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. If you look in the tab in the footer, you've got a basic view, you've got an advanced view, and then you've got a dashboard view, which does nothing right now. If you click on edit, you can add data to the iPoint here. You can actually edit your iPoint. So Valerie, our CEO, she actually prefers to add her data to her iPoint this way.
Okay.
So it's just another way. So instead of, she doesn't like to click open and tab through the iPoint editor, so she just comes here.
Great. So
let me real quick show you the other thing that led me to, which is this whole advanced tab. Let's go to a map. We'll do it here. Okay, so we created a story map that had awareness iPoints in it. Plus we brought in like the repurchase and some of things that I had in a file, right? So there are iPoints on this map that are not on that map. If I click on one of these iPoints and I go to administrative information, I click on membership, I can add this iPoint to that map by just giving it membership to that map. So now I've just clicked freeform story map. Now because I did that, this icon, this eye point with a shoe will be on that map. So let's go to it and see. There it is. That becomes a really cool feature when you're, let's say you've built out like 4 or 5 different story maps, each representing a different phase in your project. Then let's say later you realize, oh, there's a couple really important interaction points that I kind of forgot about. I'm going to add them to inventory, or maybe I'm just going to add them to one map. After that, instead of just sort of looking for it, filtering for it, or recreating it, if it's faster for you, you can just go to this membership and you can add it to that map. This is also another way you could back your eye points into inventory.
Okay.
Okay, thanks guys. I will make this recording available on Vimeo again, give it to you with a password, and feel free to share it with your teams.
Thank you, Julie. I am going to miss tomorrow's session. What am I missing?
Tomorrow, Valerie is going to be teaching all about surveys, how we use them, why we use them, how we set them up, how we put them in the tool, what we do with them once they're in the tool. And then I think she'll kick it off to me and I'll talk about our planning features, why we build roadmaps, how we prioritize our initiatives, all that kind of stuff. So I'll record it and I can send you the link and the password and all that. I think it's going to be a good one because Valerie's going to bring the whole why do we do this as a practice? Why is this important as consultants piece into it? So
No,
I
that'll
think,
be really helpful. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to miss it.
Well, that's okay. We're going to record it and then I'll just make a note to email you the link afterwards.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, thanks guys. Well, have a great day.
So Julie, did you literally want to meet in half an hour?
Yeah, let's do you want to just plan on 12:30 and I'll send you a go-to?
That's perfect.
Okay, cool. I'll see you in about a half hour.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.